اوكي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا ومرحبا بكم في اليوم الثاني من أسبوع التصميم. كده الصوت تمام.
تفضل.
كده مظبوط تمام. اوكي. الكاميرا مش واضح عندي انه شغالة، بس هل شغال الجميع؟ طيب. تمام. اوكي. طيب السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. معكم رئيس شعبة التصميم الصناعي بجمعية علوم العمران دكتور جميل عابد. أرحب بكم جميعا في يومنا الثاني من أسبوع التصميم الصناعي، وحندخل اليوم مباشرة على طول في المحاضرة. معنا الدكتور بروفيسور راندل بارتلت، وحنتكلم بس بالإنجليزي عشان أدخل المحاضر، وإن شاء الله نستمتع كلنا جميعا بمحاضرات وسلسلة جميلة اليوم. So, hello everybody. My name is Dr. Jamil Ben Abed. I'm the chairman of the Industrial Design Division at Saudi Umran Society. We're going to start immediately today. So, Professor Randall Bartlett, the mic is all yours. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't realize I was on mute. So how about video? Can you see me now there? Is that better?
All good.
All right. Okay, cool. Okay, well, good. Well, I'll share my screen and I'll start the lecture. Thank you for the introduction, and I look forward to speaking with everyone. And I'll get started here with my screen, sharing my screen here. So today I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things. One, we're going to talk first is going to be dealing with the design process, and then we'll talk about design theory, or the theory of design. So assuming everybody can see the screen okay and everything seems to be working here. So let's get started. So in a design process, I don't know why my screen's not changing. There it goes. Let me back up. It's a little slow changing. There are design processes. Now there are many design processes, and I'm sure that each one listening probably has a design process that they've been taught, or perhaps they've actually used in the past, or they may currently use it at the moment. But I'm going to talk to you as we do this about the design processes. I'm going to talk to you about three particular design processes. Now these are three of the design processes that I think, well, two of these I think everybody uses. The third one you probably don't. But I was taught these processes, listen now, I was taught these processes 40 years ago, an amazing long time ago. So when I was a student at Auburn University under my undergraduate. So as we look at the three processes, I'm going to talk about several things today, or tonight, sorry, but those things are going to be taught in threes. So the threes, so remember there's threes. We're going to talk about the three design processes, and then I'm going to talk about design theory in threes as well. So let's look at three design problem solving process charts here. And I'm going to try to be aware of my time. The first one I'm going to talk to you is about creative, or the creative process, which we all, or certainly are in that creative field. The second one is going to be the psychological process. And then the third one is going to be called the methodical process, or what I call sometimes is the, well, we also call it the circular design process, but I'm going to be referred to as the methodical process. So let me get to my screen here. So let's go with the first one. Let's go with the creative process. The creative process is certainly something that you guys may be familiar with, and I'm hoping that you can see. I'm going to minus this, so I don't need to see myself talking. That may help me. But we're going to talk about the creative process first. So you imagine a funnel, or imagine these, you start off with a limited or an unlimited amount of ideas. So you had these two lines on each side. So this model, this diagram shows line of understanding, or you could say there's one on the left and there's one on the right. And then you have a solution axis. So there's this funneling down, there's this narrowing down the process until you get to the actual goal. And so one of the first things that we're going to talk about in this process is questions. So everything we know that right to begin the process of figuring out a solution to a design problem, there are always questions. Now you probably all start with a brief, but you're going to start with certain questions. And then you're going to take those and go into a problem definition. We've all heard this all of our lives, I'm sure, that a problem, when you define the problem, you've kind of halfway solved it. So you want to understand what's really going on. So what is the problem definition? If you look down the middle, it's kind of faded now. There's a blue line and the word solution axis. You want to try to stay close to that axis as it leads to the bottom goal. But we know that we go back and forth, and finally we get to this actual goal here. But we have to stay within the realms of the problem, and that's what we call the lines of understanding. So we may have impractical methods. We may have all kinds of methods that we may use. The impractical methods could be things that maybe you were taught, things that may trial and error, things that don't work. But we're constantly building down through this solution and trying to get to that goal. Here's something we have to be careful though, is when sometimes we move outside the lines of understanding, or we're losing focus. We lose the focus of what the solution or what the design problem might be. So you got to stay, let's look at these lines of understanding perhaps as boundaries, guardrails, a fence, walls, something that keeps us somewhat focused. Otherwise, we get outside of this and then we begin to lose sight of the actual problem here. The next step is that we're searching for methods, definitions, and understanding. So we're looking at, okay, how can we understand this problem? What are some tools that we can use? Are there some methods that we've used in the past? And have we understood this problem? Has this problem ever been solved before? And then if it has, how was it solved? So this is this process we call the creative process. And then we're looking for the clarity. And once we have some clarity and direction, then this begins to surface. So we begin to see things a little bit clearer. We may get some kind of direction that we can go forth with and we can begin to use. And then that ultimately leads to, well, it basically stops there. That leads to the goal. Now, there's no time limit set on this, in this creative process. This can actually start at different, it can be very short, it can be very long. But this is a real simple solution in the creative process. It can happen almost instantaneously, or it can happen over time. So the creative process, just to kind of review, as we're trying to get to a goal, is that we just really have a bunch of ideas, bunch of possible solutions, and then we narrow it down to a final solution. So that's what we do in the creative process. So now, and I may come back to that, but let's talk about the next process. Let's talk about the psychological process. So the psychological process, these are just quick summaries now, because I want to get into the methodical process in just a few minutes. But in the psychological process, kind of like the creative process, there's this preparation phase, or what we call a period of preparation and orientation. In this preparation phase, we must understand and evaluate the problem solution. So we're defining the problem once again. Now, it's also important, as you see in the bottom sentence there, that good motivation is very important in the preparation phase. We gotta be motivated to solve this problem. Now, all of you as designers, whether you're architects, industrial designers, interior designers, systems designers, fashion designers, whatever, you're in this process of having some good motivation. You're excited about trying to solve this problem. And in this preparation phase, there are three basic steps. And let's look at those three basic steps. The first step is state the problem situation in operational terms very clearly. It must be understandable and usable. So back to just like the creative process, we're looking at the problem. We're looking at what is the problem. And then in operation terms, you got to understand it in operational terms. Now I'll talk about operational terms a little bit later in this lecture. The second one is we must decide on objectives. What are we trying to do here? You must have an overall picture. What is the goal? You know, how do you know when you arrive, right? You got to have some kind of idea of what the solution, what you're after. You have some, you know, if you have a brief, right? A project brief will list certain things, and those can be determined or be defined oftentimes as objectives. The third one is you realize and you formulate a mental picture of these objectives. So what is this going to look like? You know, what are we solving here? I'm not giving any example of a problem. You know, probably should have, but I want to just understand this basic model here of the psychological process. So you got to state the problem, right? And then you got to decide on objectives. And then the third step is the third part of the preparation phase is realize and formulate a mental picture of the objectives. You must have an overall picture. And then during this, you collect a collection of possibilities. So a collection of possibilities, you know, that could be sketches, could be sketch models, you know, studies, right? So you collect all the possible solutions, what this object or what this product could be. And that's a collection of possibilities. And then this is where you go through a period of trial and error activity. You try something, you sketch it out, you look at it, and you may think, okay, this may work or this may not work. And this is where your unconscious mind is working. So what we've done is we kind of have filled ourselves, we've filled our mind, you know, in the psychological process, in this incubation phase, we have filled ourselves with what the problem is all about. We decided on some objectives. We got a mental picture of these objectives. And then we go through a process of trial and error. And this is where the unconscious mind is working. The mind has to be loaded with possibilities. You know, you can try this, you can do this, maybe you can do that. And then sometimes this is called a period of frustration where you just can't really solve the problem, or you know, or you get stuck, as we call it. You can't go forward anymore. And this can be frustrating. And oftentimes it's best just to kind of take a break, you know, or you've heard the phrase, I'm sure someone said, hey, I need to sleep on this, right? So just let it kind of rest in the subconscious mind. Sometimes you do a totally different activity than what, maybe go out for dinner or take a break, you know, take a day off. So this is sometimes called the period of frustration. And then so what you have to do though, I want to put this in here, during this period of growing frustration, you have to get rid of some of your old beliefs of what the solution might be. You should have an open mind. You got to get rid of the old beliefs so you're able to receive new solution. Now this typically happens when you're working on a redesign of a product. Let's say that, and I'm assuming that you know you have these, right? Let's say that I'm using a blender. You know, I'm taking vegetables or fruit, and I'm going to make a smoothie or some kind of a vegetable or a fruit drink. And I put all these vegetables, all this fruit into a blender, and I hit the button and I blend it all up, and I make a smoothie. Well, that idea of a blender is already in my mind. You know, if I said I'm going to redesign the blender, then already I've got in my mind, I've got a glass or a plastic pitcher, you know, a container that has a little motor at the bottom, and it's grinding up all this fruit. But if I look at the problem differently and say, I need to design a device for making puree or grinding the fruit, you know, and so it's a different way of looking at it than redesigning a blender. So you look at what this product does and not what's been done in the past. So that's why I showed this picture of water being poured here. And that's saying that, you know, you have to get rid of old beliefs, or what I was taught is only an empty cup can be filled. So you have to empty your mind of existing solutions so that you're able to receive new ideas and new solutions. And so this is what happens. There's a renunciation of existing solutions, and there's an unconscious activity that happens. And then what happens is there's this environment or insight of environmental relief. There's this aha experience. Insight may come from any of our senses. You may see something, you may hear something, you may smell something. Don't know, you may feel something. And all of this can come to the solution, and it's called the aha experience. I'm sure everybody here that's listening has experienced this at some point in their life where they're just, thinking, I can't solve it, I can't solve it, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. And then all of a sudden, maybe in the middle of the night, maybe it was a dream, or maybe you wake up, or maybe you're looking at something else, you're reading a book, and all of a sudden you read a sentence, or you see a word, and you go, oh yeah, totally, you're not even thinking about the problem, but totally a new idea comes. And that's what we call the aha experience. And then so this is when, but it only comes is when we go through this period of frustration and we fill ourselves with other, all the possible solutions. But there are often blocks to insight. But what we do now, and that's when you get that aha experience. But still now you have to go through a period of verification and a period of evaluation. So in any product design, any development, you have to verify your solution, verify your idea that it will work, and then you have to evaluate it. And then you get to the solution or to the ultimate goal. So that's the first two. The first one was the creative process. The second one is the psychological process. Now, I use these two without even knowing that I'm using them, right? They just happen. So they're kind of like just intrinsic, if you will. There's a word that they're just part of who you are as a designer. The creative process is there. You're a creative individual. And the psychological process is just how the mind works. Now I'm going to take you to and spend a little more time on the practical process. And that's what we're going to call the methodical process. And then the methodical process, and I can make this chart available to you on the left-hand side here. There's what we call the circular design process. Now, this is a process that we use at Auburn University, and it's been used for over 50-something years at Auburn. Now, it's changed a little bit and been modified. In fact, it's called the modified circular design process. Now, it doesn't look like a circle, does it? But it's all kind of a linear fishbone-looking chart here. But there's three phases it's broken down into. But this gentleman here was my major professor. This is Dr. Walter Scher. He's from Switzerland. He's no longer alive. But this is how he looked after I graduated. But he was the one responsible for coming up with this circular design process. And, I've added a few things. It's been adapted, so that's why we call it the modified circular design process. So in fact, he even called it the modified circular design process. And let's go through that. So back again, there's the chart. Now the chart is broken down into three basic kind of categories: and design research, design development, and design presentation. So if you look at the chart on the left-hand side of the chart, there's the light gray, and then there's the medium gray, and then the dark gray. But in this, so design research is basically information. Design development is formation. You're formulating something. And then the design presentation is you're communicating your idea. So design research is information, design development is formation, and design presentation is communication. Now, if you notice the dotted lines on these, right, these are feedback lines. So there's constant feedback. And so that's where the circular part comes from. I might get into the design development process and realize I got to go back and do more research. I may get into the communication phase and realize that I got to go back to formation or even back to design research. So there's a circular process that happens here. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. Let's get into some of the details. So in the circular design process, if I have a problem or a project brief, and this is where I start. Now you're going to see some of the same words just like we use in the creative process and then in the psychological process. But we have to identify the operational use and need of the product or system. Why is there a need for this product? Why is there a need for an automobile? Why is there a need for a ladder? Why is there a need for a microwave or a coffee pot or a kettle? What are the needs here? Then I have to decide on objectives. So this is part of that design research, that information phase. And then I decide on my objectives, just like we did in the other two processes. Now here's the one: you collect and produce information. So this might be, now there's several charts that I can make available at some other time. Collect and produce information. It may be a comparative product analysis. If I'm redesigning a product, I may look at what's been out there. I may do some surveys. I may, other kinds of research. So I collect and produce information about the product or about this problem. And then this one is one that I think is often looked, is you're training yourself in operating the object. If I'm designing a product, then I need to use the product. Oftentimes I see students trying to redesign something and they never even use the product, or they think they've used it, or they've used it a couple of times and they think they know about it. So you got to train yourself in operating the object. Even though you may not be, sometimes this is very limiting, sometimes it's very difficult, or you have to at least talk to many people that are using this device or using a product. And then look what, this is interesting. The problem statement comes next. So I have to, before I can write a comprehensive problem statement, I need to know as much as I can about the operational use of this product. And then you want to define performance criteria. Defining performance criteria is, what is this object going to do? What are we wanting this? How should this product perform? And so I define the criteria. Now, a lot of that may come from the project brief, but a lot of it may not. It may come from what you defined. And then now, finally, right, this is still in design research, we're making 2D and 3D product design stuff. We're doing some sketches. We're making some sketch models. Even in the research phase, even before we get to the development, we're taking, because ideas are starting to pop into our head. And when those ideas come, we need to record those ideas. So to me, this is interesting part of the research. Oftentimes, this is not part of design research. It comes in the development phase. But this is oftentimes you need to begin to get those ideas. And you generalize. That's the next thing. You begin to just think about this whole possible solution. And then we use the systems approach. Now, the systems approach starts now. In fact, we could start with the systems approach, because that's really what this is. This is a system. This circular design process is a system. But we're going to start now with the systems approach. Now, we're still in the design research. So we analyze and classify the information. You remember earlier, just a couple of steps ago, we collected and produced information. Now we're going to analyze and classify the information. And then we're going to define constraints. How big it should be, how much it should weigh. There may be some constraints already given for us. But we're going to define these constraints. Now, this is what I think a designer should be able to do. A designer should be able to define the constraints, and sometimes constraints can be limiting, but limiting, I think, actually helps me as a designer. It keeps me from getting way off track. You remember the creative process when you have those lines of understanding, and then we lose focus and we get outside those boundaries? Well, boundaries can be defined also as constraints, that you want to stay within these constraints. And it doesn't limit you, but it keeps you focused on solving the problem. And then you formulate a hypothesis of all possible solutions. So what are some possible solutions that may happen? Now, these could be written, these could be sketches, these could be models. So this is still in the design research. And then you want to prepare design specifications. Now, this may come from constraints or come from criteria, or may be given to you by the project brief. It could be that it can only be this big, or it can only be, it can only weigh this much, or, it has to be able to be shipped flat. What are some design specifications? Or these can also, be titled performance criteria. So now this is kind of one of the last steps in design research. Now, I mentioned there are many, many tools that are used in design research. And I don't have time today to go into all these tools that you can use in these steps in research and development, and even in communication. But this is just kind of general fishbone, step-by-step process that we're going through. So now from research, we go into development, or what we call formation. And again, now we're developing concepts that are 2D and 3D. Before we had initial design studies. Now we're beginning to develop a concept. You know, I think a lot of times students get concepts and ideas mixed up, and it's easy, right? And I'm sure that I know I do it at times, but an idea is basically an idea. A concept is closer to a possible solution. This is a viable solution or a viable concept in 2D or 3D. And then you develop overall solutions, which comes next. And then you you erect key models in this development phase. So now I'm beginning to build some models, some ideas. Now I know this can, even in this day and time, right, that could be 3D models, you know, it could be computer generated models, it could be physical models, test models, right? I don't know what you may call it there. We sometimes call them, we call them models, but they may just be kind of a technical model, right? Making sure something will hinge or fold or what, you know, that we're dealing with. It's not an appearance model. It's a kind of a test model. But this is part of developing those overall solutions. And then here's a key thing. I think this gets left out. I don't think we analyze and test and evaluate alternative solutions. I think we come up with an idea and we go with it. But oftentimes, especially in school, there's not a lot of time to evaluate the solution, test the solution. You know, so you analyze, you test, and you analyze it from several factors, and I'll touch on that in just a few minutes. And you test and you evaluate alternative solutions. We don't. You look at the word solutions as plural, right? It's not a solution; it's solutions. And then you validate your hypothesis. So you're looking at your hypothesis, and excuse me, drink of water there. And your hypothesis there, you're trying to say, okay, is this really a possible solution? So how do you validate it? Well, you develop the best possible solution. You make variations, right? Or iterations sometimes is another word that can be plugged in here. And then you develop a pre-prototype. Now, the pre-prototype is something that can be, you know, the physical size. It has appearance as well. It's not a prototype, but it's a pre-prototype. And you develop the pre-prototype. And you can see all these steps now that are going through. And a lot of this is evaluation and testing. And then you simulate actual performance if you can't do the true performance, and prepare a report to validate experiments and findings. So this is evaluation. I really know that even at Auburn University, where we've been around for many, many years teaching industrial design, we tend to skip over this. We don't tend to take the time to validate the pre-prototype. A lot of times we go from an idea, concept, and then straight to a prototype and not a pre-prototype where we can test things. And this has to be done where you test the actual performance. And then you write a report, right? And you validate your findings. And then this is the next, right? You synthesize and optimize the pre-prototype. So you go back and you make changes, you make corrections, you know, you make the little, you may have to do some different kinds of input to get a different output. And then back to the testing. Look, you know, you're back at testing it in an actual situation again. And then lastly, you redesign the details. So now we've gone through the research and the development phase. Now, what I haven't given you here is a general time frame. Typically, let's say that we had, let's say it was a 10-week project. We would spend 3 weeks in research, 5 weeks in development, and 2 weeks in communication. So it's a 3-5-2. So 30% of my time, say it's a year-long project, then, you know, I would take 30% of that time would be working on the research, 50% would be the development, and then 20% would be the final communication of that project. Now that's obviously varies depending on the project, but you can see there's more emphasis of time in the development stage. That's because you're doing a lot of testing and going back and forth and redesigning the details. So in the final presentation or the design presentation, which is communication, is you finalize the design and then you construct the prototype. And then you analyze the prototype for production and planning. Now, oftentimes this is difficult to do in an educational setting because you may not really be totally into into the production and planning. But you analyze or prototype for production. And then you finalize all the graphics, engineering drawings, productions, and sales, right? I mean, this includes, could be packaging. You finalize comprehensive design report, and then you present orally and visually the total project. And then you have production and distribution and use. So I went through the last phase, the last part of the presentation phase very quickly, but now you're just mainly documenting everything and getting it ready for actual production. I feel so confident, and I know there's a lot of other little steps and other tools that can go into this process, but I feel pretty confident that this process can help you as you finalize your design. So now I'm going to move real quick into this, and then these will tie in, then I'll be done. I know that was a lot. So that one's the creative, the psychological, and the circular or the modified or the methodical design process. So now we get into the theory of design. So look at these three circles here. So we want to take this into the human, the technical, and the production function. So the human function, I think you can be aware that deals with aesthetics, right? And all kinds of things on that side, how the product works, design thinking. Then you have the technical, and then you have the production function. So if you look at these three realms, these three areas of theory of design, the human, technical, and production function, and if I take it and look at it in a different light, you can see here, hopefully you can see the screen okay. All three of these realms, these three circles are interlocking here. So now I'm dealing with the human function, the technical, and the production function. Right in the middle of where this Euler and Venn diagram come together is the product or system that we're working on. So if I look at this, if I look at this theory again, industrial designers we are as industrial designers, I should say, we are mostly concerned with human needs. So we're dealing with these human needs, which can be divided into three sections. The economic and social is the first one, where we're dealing with the price quality, the price paid, and the social acceptance of the product or system. So that's very important, right, when you're developing a product design. And then the second human need is the aesthetic/culture, form quality, the cultural and visual acceptance of a product or system. I mean, I spent some time at the university in Jeddah, and you know, it's a different culture from where I live in America here. It's a little bit different. I was certainly loved what I saw and experienced there, but that's what we're talking about, the aesthetic and the culture, the form quality. So that's a particular human need. I won't get into this, but Maslow's, you may have studied Maslow's hierarchical needs. He had 5 basic hierarchical needs, but before he died, he actually added 2 more hierarchical needs. And these 2 that he added was, look at the one that's almost at the top there, was aesthetics, that we as human beings, that we like things that are pretty, right? Things that have balance, things that have nice forms. So there's an aesthetic need. And then he also talked about the cognitive needs, where that we want to have knowledge and we want to have meaning and self-awareness. So those are the 2 that have been added. I'm going to skip over this slide, but 1970, he changed it from 5 to 7 to know and understand, and the aesthetic. And the last one here is the practical physiological. This is the one dealing with the human needs here. Efficiency, quality. The practical and physical efficiency and acceptance of a product or system. So how does this thing work? Does this product work? So those are the 3 basic human function needs there, are the human needs. The economical and social, the aesthetic, cultural, and the practical physiological. And then you have, in the other one, you have, in the technical process, you have direct factors that primarily affect the materials used in the design solution, but not limited to materials. And then you have indirect factors, factors that are affected indirectly by the components in the design solution. So that's the technical process. Now, that can be materials, all kinds of stuff that falls into the technical process. I won't have time today to get into this. And then you have the production process. So in the production process, you have manufacturing, the process, the production process of the components, the parts, and the assembly. And then you also have here the planning. This deals with packaging and shipping and distribution and marketing and sales. Now, I want you to notice that these 3 realms, the human, technical, and production function, they overlap to produce this new product or this system here. So real quick, you know, you have the human function. So we're more concerned, look how the circle is bigger now. We're more concerned with those aesthetic and cultural, the practical, physiological. Remember those things, those human needs. We're more, as a designer, we are more concerned with those than we are the technical and even the production function. But oftentimes there's a roadblock. So I've got an ideal solution. I start looking at trying to make this thing actually physically work, and I have a technical problem. The technical problem may cause an issue, which may cause me to go back and change something, which may change the aesthetics of the product. It may change the form. And then I had to go back to the technical function. And then I may decide to go to the production function once I get through the technical aspects of the product. And then I may hit a problem, hit a roadblock, right? Hit a problem, which may take me back, which may address or affect, the technical part of the product. And then once I figure that out, then I go back to the production. Or I could get into production and there could be an issue with something with how it's made that could affect the visual aspect of the product. So then it goes back to the human function. And then I go back to production function. So what happens is as a designer, you got to be able to work in all three of these realms. So this is what happens. I know we put more emphasis on the human function, you know, the human needs, but I cannot neglect the technical aspects of a product, or nor can I neglect the production aspects of a product. So this theory of design, if you look at these three kind of things here, there's the human function, the technical function, and the production function. And all of this happens here as I work through this circular design process, that I'm thinking about the human function of this product. I'm thinking about the technical function, and I'm thinking about the production function as I go through here. So even in this, there's probably more emphasis, if you see, on the first part of the research on the human function. And then I get into the technical function of how this thing will work, and then I got to produce this product. So there's this circle, this model here, and then the human, the technical, and the production function. So what I believe is, what defines a good industrial designer? I believe that a good industrial designer is one that, or a person or a designer that can function effectively in all three realms. And those three realms are the human, the technical, and production function. They got to have some understanding of materials and processes, packaging, shipping, and even back to the human function. That's my presentation. That's my lecture. It's about 9:45 at the moment, so I tried to do that in 35 minutes. So I now will pass this over to, I guess, to the host.
Well, thank you so much. No, I mean, it's okay, whatever you want, it's fine. We're going to have a Q&A session. Thank you so much, first of all, for being a part of this and for your great lecture. That was very amazing and very nice. Thank you so much. We're going to play 2 videos of recorded interviews of graduates and students in the industrial design and product design in Saudi while we sort out some of the viewers' questions, and then we're going to come back in like 2 minutes and ask you some questions from the viewers.
Oh, perfect.
All right. So if we can just play the videos, please, while we sort out the questions.
السلام عليكم، أنا رغد علي هلالي، برودكت ديزاينر، تخرجت عام 2019. إيش سبب اختياري لهذا التخصص؟ كنت مخيرة في البداية بين برودكت وانفايرمنت وانتيرير. كنت متأكدة ورا برودكت ديزاين في سر مرة كبير، بس ما كنت عارفة إيش هو. كيف كانت تجربتك مع قسمك؟ كان تعب، بس ورا كل تعب فرحة كبيرة للمجهول. فين بشتغل دحين؟ بشتغل في محل أثاث، إن شاء الله حتسمع عنه قريب. إيش كان أفضل مادة عندي؟ ستيتي 6 عملت بورتابل هير دراير، أقرب المشاريع لقلبي. نصيحتي لمن يرغب في دراسة المجال، بإذن الله حتكوني زي الجوكر في أي مكان حتقدر تشتغل فيه. ما هو الشيء اللي تتمنيه لو عملتيه بشكل مختلف بعد مرور تجربة الدراسة التخصص؟ ستيتي 4 عملت هانديكاب شاور شير، في الوقت الحالي حقدر أطوره أكتر. ما هو أفضل مشروع عملته؟ أعطينا نبذة عنه. أفضل مشروع عملته هو الكابستون بروجكت. عملت بورتابل تويلت فيها خصوصية عالية وصمم بطريقة حديثة. ما هي وظيفة أحلامك؟ ما في وظيفة معينة هي وظيفة أحلامي، بس في أشياء كثيرة لسه أبغى أتعلمها. أبغى أستمتع في كل تجربة أخوضها، في كل وظيفة أكون فيها.
السلام عليكم، اسمي فتون كرداوي، خريجة 2019 من جامعة عفت، تخصص برودكت ديزاين. ما سبب اختياري لهذا التخصص؟ لقيت نفسي فيه. أحب التخصصات الحرة اللي تعتمد على تطوير المشاريع وتجديد الأفكار. كيف تجربتك مع قسمك؟ الحمد لله كانت تجربة جدا جميلة. اشتغلت فيها على مشاريع مختلفة وطورت من المهارات اللي أحتاجها في تخصصي. فين تشتغلي الآن؟ اشتغل في مشروع تصميم أثاث، إن شاء الله حتسمع عنه قريب. إيش كانت أفضل مادة بالتخصص درستيها؟ الاستوديو كان أحب مادة بالنسبة لي، لأنه كنا كل سمستر نسوي مشروع جديد، فهذا كان شيء ممتع. نصيحتك لمن يرغب في دراسة المجال؟ أنا معكم الصراحة، تخصص جدا جميل ومميز، بس عموما كل مجالات الديزاين أو التصميم تعتمد إنك أنت تبرزي نفسك عشان مستقبلا يعني تكون عندك فرص حلوة. ما هو أفضل مشروع عملتيه وأعطينا نبذة عنه؟ أفضل مشروع عملته هو مشروع تخرجي اسمه ميلو. كان عبارة عن صحن للأطفال يساعدهم في إنهم يكملوا أكلهم أو إنهم يأكلوا. في شاشة صغيرة فيها بروجرام حيساعدهم على ذا الشيء. ما هي وظيفة أحلامك؟ أتمنى مستقبلا إن شاء الله إني أكون شركتي الخاصة اللي أنتج فيها كل منتجاتي. شكرا.
Than I thought. All right, so we have a question here. So how can we benefit from artificial intelligence to develop design stages and shorten some of them?
Well, I don't know if that's question to me, huh?
Yep.
Right. Okay. So how can we use artificial intelligence to shorten some of the design process? So is that basically the question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very possible. I don't know how, if we look at artificial intelligence and creating that, and I've only been playing around with artificial intelligence just a little bit, but I think what I see happening is, in some of my recent work was with product, understanding the product, maybe with how to operate the object. You know, instead of having to read a set of instructions on how to use this object, you know, I can hover my phone over a screen or some kind of code, and then it tells me what to do there. I don't know, I never had really thought about how to shorten the design process. I think there's still a need to be able to physically touch something right at some point, and to think about it, it could shorten one of the steps at some point to get to a possible solution. But I don't know if we can totally rely on artificial intelligence for validating the problem, I guess, or validating the solution. I still think you're going to have a physical object at some point in time. But great question. I've never been asked that. I don't know. I don't really have a great answer for that. But yeah, I'm certainly very open to that and think that it could be used to maybe shorten the design process. Yes.
I mean, I could kind of rephrase this question in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, design process has been always maybe the same for centuries, probably.
Right,
but
right.
with the new technology, probably things has improved, and maybe that kind of speed up the process per se, more than shortening it. Just so a lot of technologies, a lot of things are available now. When people used to draw sketches of things, now we can use 3D modeling and computer software and stuff. We can 3D print prototypes and do stuff which is way more advanced than what used to happen just only 20 years ago.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and I think that will continue to happen. It should give us opportunity to maybe have a larger selection of possible concepts. You know, some that we could even validate quicker and test. You know, by using 3D modeling or prototyping. to get to a possible solution. You know, one of the things that I would like to warn against, and I see my students doing this, is in the research phase, is they're doing all their research, which is great, and I do too, as we all do, on the internet, right? And they're not physically getting out into the stores and touching the objects and seeing the products. You know, it's more about the, you know, looking to see what's available, like a comparative product analysis. They're just going and looking at what they see on the internet and not physically looking at the objects and holding them and figuring out how they're actually manufactured. So I think maybe artificial intelligence, maybe somehow to observe how something is manufactured, maybe using that in materials and processing. We were doing a project last semester where they were blow molding. The company wanted the object to be blow molded. And our students had a blow molding, you know, lecture or two in their materials and processes class, but really didn't understand the blow molding, what you can and cannot do with it. So we, you know, I physically had to bring objects in. So if there was some way to maybe use you know, AR for that, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to change. It's going to change the way that we do things. It has to change the way the things we do.
I mean, that's just probably in all fields with all technology and stuff. Everything is improving and progressing and changing.
Yeah,
which is interesting. That is true.
Yeah.
We have an interesting question. It seems like a lot of students are asking, what is more important, industrial design or interior design?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Wow, I don't know. Of course, I'm an industrial designer, right? I'm not an interior designer, even though I've done some interior work. I don't know if one is more important than the other. I think they're both important, obviously. I would think that's a way to answer that question. I think the importance of part of that is that you guys are designers, and that you got to put the human first. I think you got to put the, you know, if it doesn't function properly, it doesn't work. You know, if you're building an interior space and it looks beautiful and it's gorgeous, but somehow the space is not utilized correctly, or it's uncomfortable perhaps, or it's not efficient. It's the same thing with a product. I mean, we're often guilty of buying a product because it looks cool, and then it doesn't work, you know. And so I think the same thing with interiors. I don't think, I'd be very hesitant to say which one's more important.
I mean, everybody will have a sense and a feeling towards his major. I mean, I did architecture, so
Sure.
probably we swing along lines of each other. We're all designers in general. So we do, architects can do some industrial design product work, design, interior design. It's kind of a thin line between all of them in a sense.
It really is. I think, too, I've done a little bit of architecture, mainly I've done some amphitheater work before, and some outdoor space, some kind of landscape architecture, but I've never done I did my house, but I've never, you know, did anything commercial. To me, architecture was such a great field, but I was always thinking, I can't hold it. You know, I can't put it in my hands and feel it. So that's probably why I gravitated toward product design. Of course, I've done some products that are so big I can't hold anyway. I think what we have to do is that we can't lose sight of design. I wished I had time to talk about, do another lecture on the word design, and you may have seen some things, but if you take the word sign, take the word design, D-E, sign, and a sign is a vehicle that communicates something. You know, there's road signs, there's signs in buildings, there's exit signs. You know, like, for instance, an exit sign is real. It's a real object that's hanging from above a doorway. It's a real object, but you do not exit through that exit sign. You exit through what it points to. So the door is a greater reality. You know, you exit, so it's something real, but there's another reality out there. And so I think we have to look at design as the word sign, as it shows the way. Signs communicate. So if I have an interior space, you know, can I navigate through it? Is it obvious how I walk through it? In architecture, you know, is it correct? Is it dealing with sunlight and, you know, all the kind of things that happen in the building, its position? Same thing with a product. I think you should be able to operate a product without having any instructions. You know, but so I think we have to never can get rid of the root word sign of And so, but that's a whole nother lecture there, maybe a little deep. So, any other questions?
We have one last question, but I do have a question for you.
Okay. Yeah.
That question. In the university where you teach, it seems like everybody has, I mean, the curriculums are kind of similar between all majors in general, but I mean, each school has its own take on things. And usually industrial design, it seems like it's a holistic kind of view where you gather a lot of disciplines together. So would you say that graduates from your school would feel like they have a specific specialization in a specific area? They're more advanced in technologies, they're more advanced in something specific, or they're just general design, interior industrial designers, no specific speciality or something?
Yeah, I think the latter. I believe that we're considered to be somewhat in our curriculum, in our teaching, as generalists. You know, we've had students, you know, we don't focus on just furniture, even though we do furniture. We don't focus on automotive design. But we do focus on you know, we're very rooted in the Bauhaus and the Ohm School of Design. We're very functional product. You know, we still do physical working prototypes if we can, even though we do 3D modeling and all that stuff, right? So we're probably more of a practical school in that aspect as industrial design. Architecture may be a little more theory related, but we're totally separate. We're in a totally separate building. You know, we're cross campus. So industrial design, we have our own space. Now we have 10 years ago, graphic design joined us, but it's 2 separate degrees, totally separate curriculum. But I would say we're more generalist, if you will. You know, students working in all sorts of fields. You know, some are going into web design, you know, as that and users, and some are going into actual product development, product design. So you know, some go into sales, but most of the students are going into some kind of product development. So.
All right. So we're going to go through the last question for this evening.
Okay.
So the question is how to achieve a balance of design in between innovation and consumer satisfaction.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's what a great question. Oh, man, that's a really good question.
If we can innovation.
Yeah, well, innovation, you know, we can talk about what is innovative. Is it a totally new solution? I like to look at things that are innovative to me, or things that are kind of unique. You know, that's a little different. And innovation, I think, is the primary. Well, I think innovation will come, and it can be a very simple thing. It doesn't have to be totally, you know, a new technology. It can be very just innovative, and a lot of times it's cross-pollinated, where it's something that's innovative in another field, another area, another product, or some other system, and you adapt it and use it in your solution. I think is a key thing. Now, is it better? What was the last part now? Innovative better than, or more? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought there.
It was innovation and consumer satisfaction. So
yeah, sure. So consumer satisfaction, I think, yeah, I think to me, they both are parallel. You know, if it's innovative, then I think there's going to be consumer satisfaction. But I believe, as a designer, that consumer satisfaction is going to come through that first thing of that human need, or that human function, as I was talking about. I did write a paper years ago on what we call functional aesthetics. Is that I don't think we set out to make something really a pretty product. I think it happens in the process, that we don't just make something work and then say, okay, now let's add some cosmetic to it to make it beautiful. I think that's part of the product. I think a simple solution, you know, that's very satisfied to use, as from a user standpoint, that the satisfaction, I mean, that can be, I won't say it was actually innovative, but I think they have to be somewhat joined together. I mean, if I have something truly innovative and I don't get any customer satisfaction of it, then it fails. You know, just like in an engineering product, a well-designed product, you could have a well-engineered product. Let's say you have a chair, just a basic chair that's made out of, say, titanium, really thin rods, and it's very strong, but it looks weak. then I think you failed. So a well-engineered product might be rejected by the designer because it doesn't fulfill its human function. That human function is that it doesn't look like it would hold me up. It doesn't look safe, even though it really is. You know, it defies gravity or something, or it looks like, you know, it's so thin, but it's really, really strong. Then I think you failed there. So there's an innovation of materials, right? But it didn't. But the customer's not satisfied because it doesn't look like it's safe. Does that make any sense? You know, so I think we have to be careful there. You know, that we don't just stretch it so much that it misses the human need part of it, the customer, you know, the consumer satisfaction. Man, what some great questions. We got a bunch of good. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Randall from Auburn University. It was a pleasure to have you. And if you want to say something before we wrap this up. Yeah,
certainly. Hey, it's been an honor to be able to lecture here. You know, it looks like I may be the only American on the board there. And I wish this virus would just go away. I would love to visit, and I would love to visit your school at some point there. Or, you know, I've only been to Saudi Arabia twice and had a blast while I was there for those a week at a time. I was supposed to have been there last April, but that got canceled for COVID. And then I was supposed to be there in September, but that may not happen. But hey, it's been a pleasure. I would welcome any emails. I'd love to have those questions sent to me via email. And, you know, let's stay in touch. I hope that you guys learned something. I hope this makes sense. And if you need more information, more documentation on this presentation, was it recorded, by the way? Anyway.
Definitely. This will be on YouTube on our channel. We'll send you the link immediately.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. Hey, I look forward to it now, but I'll be able to join other lectures later this week, or if I can.
Well, for this week, you know, but for future collaboration, definitely. We're going to sort out so many things together, I'm sure.
Okay, cool. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I had a great time. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. اوكي، شكرا للدكتور راندل. الان معنا البروفيسور الاستاذ الدكتور صفاء حنفي، حيكون موضوعها على التصميم الصناعي بين الألفية الثانية والألفية الثالثة. تفضلي دكتورة.
دكتورة صفاء، بعد إذنك تفتح المايك.
معلش. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. بداية أحب أن أقدم الشكر للقائمين على تنظيم هذا أعضاء الجمعية السعودية لعلوم العمران، وأخص بالشكر الدكتورة غادة دهيم لإتاحة الفرصة لي للمشاركة في هذا اللقاء الجميل. إن شاء الله اللي أرجو من الله عز وجل أن يكون لقاء مسري. لقاءنا اليوم بيدور حول التصميم بين الألفية الثانية والثالثة، والسؤال اللي بيطرح نفسه قبل ما نبدأ: هل حدثت نقلة قوية وملحوظة بين الألفية الثانية والثالثة تستدعي منا هذا الاهتمام؟ يعني 20 سنة عقدين من الزمان يمكنهم أن يحققوا نقلة في تاريخ البشرية؟ والواقع إن هذا ما حدث بالفعل، ولازم نتعرف عليه لأنه بيوضح لنا رؤية مستقبلية ممكن من خلالها نقدر نتصور إيه اللي ممكن يكون في المستقبل بعد 20 سنة، بعد 50 سنة. فمعرفتنا بالتطور وكيف حدث تؤهلنا دايما لتصور المستقبل. الحقيقة في نهاية الألفية الثانية بدأ حدوث تغير في المصطلحات والعلوم بشكل قوي، وخاصة في مجال التصميم، وتحولات عالمية كتير. فكما كان عصر البخار وعصر الكهرباء وعصر الاتصالات، يعتبر هذا العصر هو عصر التصميم والإبداع والابتكار. وده لأن الألفية الثالثة الحقيقة اهتمت وركزت على الإنسان وعلى الفكر البشري، وعملت الحكومات على الاستثمار في الفكر والعقل. ويمكن ده من أهم أسباب استحداث أقسام تصميم المنتجات والتصميم الصناعي، لأن المستقبل في الفكر وليس في القوة أو التكرار الأشياء موجودة. وهو ما ظهر في بداية القرن ال21 بامتزاج 3 عناصر على مستوى العالم، هم البيولوجي بما فيهم جسم الإنسان، والمنتجات، والرقمنة. وأطلق على هذا الامتزاج سايبر فيزيكال سيستم. وده طبعا ما بيحتاجش مننا أي تفسير ولا أي شرح، لأن ده واقع بنعيشه كلنا. فمحدش منا على مختلف الأعمار والثقافات في العصر الحالي يقدر يستغنى عن جواله أو جهاز الكمبيوتر بتاعه، وأصبحنا نشهد أنواع مختلفة ومتعددة ومتقدمة جدا من الذكاء الاصطناعي.
عذرا دكتورة، عفوا
أفندم؟
عفوا، انت قلبت الشاشة لانه واقفة لحد الآن، بس اتأكد معاكي انه يمكن واقفة.
معلش.
اوكي
واضح في عندي. اوكي
تفضل.
اوكي شكرا. طبعا الامتزاج اللي بيننا وبين الأجهزة ده كان نتيجة ظهور الروبوت والسوفت وير في كل شيء في المنتجات اللي احنا بنتعامل معاها خلال الألفية الثالثة. وده طبعا هو اللي عمل الثورة الصناعية الرابعة اللي هي ثورة الرقمنة. الحقيقة الثورة الصناعية الرابعة دي هي تعتبر حديث العالم، هي تنبؤ من بعض المعماريين سنة 2001، وكانوا منزلينه على شبكة التواصل الاجتماعي وكاتبين عليه وورنينج ستوب، العنوان بتاعه ستوب. وده يعتبر بمثابة تحذير. كان التحذير ده يعني ملخصه كان بيقول ايه؟ بيقول ان نحن على وشك ان ندخل في ثورة، ولا بد ان نملك الشجاعة ان نقتحم هذه الثورة ونقتحم هذه الظروف ونسير متطلبات الألفية الثالثة التي بدت سمتها من نهاية الألفية الثانية بظهور الروبوت والهاي تكنولوجي والسوفت وير. وركز البيان على التأكيد على أن النظام اللحالي لا يعمل. present system doesn't work. الحقيقة أكد وكتب الجملة دي 3 مرات في البيان، وأكدوا أن لازم نفكر بشكل مختلف، لأن طريقة التفكير بالطريقة التقليدية لا يمكن أن يكون له أي قيمة في الألفية الثالثة ولا يتناسب مع متطلباتها إطلاقا. في الواقع التحذير ده على الرغم من أنه ممكن نشوفه البعض عادي، أمر عادي جدا مكتوب على الإنترنت، عاملين في مجال التصميم الصناعي، وبدأنا بالفعل في مجال التعليم الأكاديمي نتابع باستمرار الحديث والجديد في مجال العلوم والتكنولوجيا، وخاصة العلوم المتعلقة بالخامات الجديدة والعلوم التكنولوجية، وخاصة التكنولوجيا الحديثة باستمرار. يعني البيان كان بمثابة إنذار للعالم. وظهر في الألفية الثانية، في الألفية الثالثة أسفة، بعض المصطلحات الجديدة اللي ما كانتش موجودة إطلاقا ولا اهتمينا بيها في الألفية الثانية، اللي هي زي اليوزر انترفيس واليوزر اكسبيرينس والعلوم المتعلقة بالمستخدم، وظهرت الاستدامة والريسايكلينج وفروع جديدة جدا من التصميم والانتراكتيف ديزاين والبراماتيك ديزاين والسيرفيس ديزاين. كل ده ما كانش ليه أي وجود في الألفية الثانية. في الحقيقة التغيير اللي حصل ده ما كانش سببه البيان، لا، أي مجتمع أو أي واقع نقدر بنحكم عليه من التغيير من خلال 3 عناصر، هما الفلسفة والتكنولوجيا والعلم. طب تعالوا نشوف في الألفية الثانية إيه اللي حصل بالنسبة للفلسفة والعلم والتكنولوجيا وإزاي اتغيروا وحصل هذا التطور. بالنسبة للفلسفة، الفلسفة هي بتشمل فرعين: الفيزيكس اللي هي العلوم الطبيعية، سواء كانت الطب، الهندسة، الرياضة، العلوم اللي احنا تقريبا كلنا بنعرفها، والميتافيزيكس اللي هي الغيبيات أو المعتقدات. وطبعا احنا كمجتمعات مسلمة مسألة الميتافيزيكس دي بالنسبة لنا محسومة، وعارفين ان الكون ده ربنا سبحانه وتعالى هو اللي خلقه، وخلق الأرواح وخلق الجن والإنس وخلق كل ده، واحنا مؤمنين بيه. لكن الحقيقة بالنسبة للغرب، الفلسفة اللي كانت سائدة في الألفية الثانية هي المادية والوجودية، وهم يمكن دول هم اللي غيروا المنظور المادي للعالم كله وأثروا على المجتمع والتكنولوجيا. طيب، الفلسفة بالنسبة للألفية الثانية، الألفية الثانية اتأثرت بشكل غريب جدا بنظرية داروين، اللي هي نظرية احنا تقريبا كلنا درسناها وعرفناها في المناهج وفي المدارس، اللي هي نظرية النشوء والارتقاء والبقاء للأقوى. فأنا بتكلم على إن المادية دي جت منين؟ أصلها فين؟ أصلها فلسفي. لأن نظرية داروين، طبعا داروين زي ما احنا نعرف عنه إن هو كان عالم جيولوجي وبريطاني وإنجليزي، وكان بيلف العالم في الأسطول البحري وبيسجل ويدون ملاحظاته. وقال داروين في أبحاثه إن كل شيء، الكون ده كله أصله شيء واحد، هو خلية في المية، وإن الإنسان ما هو إلا تطور لهذا الشيء، والمخلوقات كلها أصلها خلية واحدة اتطورت من المية، تحولت لسمكة وبعدين سحلية وبعدين ضفدع. المهم فضل داروين يكتب التطور الطبيعي لغاية ما وصل لسلم التطور وهو الإنسان، وإن الإنسان ما هو إلا نتاج تطور للقردة العليا. يعني هو يعتبر، والصورة دي على فكرة اللي قدامنا بنشوفها كتير في الكتب، لأن المجتمع في الألفية الثانية اتأثر جدا بنظرية داروين للنشوء والارتقاء، ودون كل الكلام ده في كتاب اسمه أصل الأنواع أو أصل الأجناس، Orange of Species. وقال في آخر الكتاب الحقيقة إن لو ظهر عكس الكلام ده، ولو ظهر إن المخلوقات أصلها مختلف مش واحد، هتسقط نظريته. وبالفعل سقطت نظرية داروين في أول الألفية أو في نهاية الألفية الثانية، يعني بداية الألفية الثالثة تقريبا، لأن اكتشفوا الDNA والRNA اللي هم أصل الجينز المكون لكل الكائنات، وإن كل كائن من الكائنات ليه جين مختلف عن التاني. وكان على فكرة داروين أما بتقف قدامه حاجة أو بيرجع كل الأشياء للصدفة، إنها اتخلقت في الطبيعة بالصدفة. وطبعا سقطت نظرية داروين باكتشاف الDNA والRNA. والحقيقة شارك داروين في نشر الوجودية والمادية أينشتاين بنظرية النسبية، اللي طبعا برضو كلنا تقريبا مرت علينا، واللي هو كان بيقول فيها ان الكون بيتمدد او يتسع زيه زي البالونة، وانه حط مقدار لهذا الاتساع يزيد مع الزمن. وطبعا كلنا عارفين ان ربنا سبحانه وتعالى قال وإن له لمسعون. طبعا الكون بيتسع لكن مش زي ما تخيل أينشتاين. فباكتشاف التلسكوب الفضائي اكتشفوا بيه مجرات جديدة، واكتشفوا ان الكلام ده مش حقيقي، ان الكون ما بيتسعش زي البالونه، وبالتالي سقطت نظريه اينشتاين. طبعا في نهايه الالفيه الثانيه سقطت نظريه داروين ونظريه اينشتاين، ابتدت الامور تختلف. بالنسبه للعلم في الالفيه الثانيه، احنا اتفقنا ان احنا اما بنحكم على تغير مجتمع أو نقلة حصلت في المجتمع من 3 عناصر، قلنا الفلسفي والساينس والتكنولوجي. العلم في الألفية الثانية وصل لشيء اسمه السمارت برودكت، وطبعا هي المنتجات اللي احنا كلنا بنتعامل معاها نفسها بنفسها، زي القطر الآلي وزي الساعات أو زي السمارت سكرين. ولغايه ما وصلوا للروبوت. وطبعا كان اهم انجاز في الالفيه الثانيه هو الروبوتس اللي هو الذكاء الاصطناعي. ووصلوا الحقيقه في لحاجه ثانيه، الاستنساخ. بس قبل ما اتكلم عن الاستنساخ هكمل النقطه اللي هي خاصه بالسمارت برودكت الخاص بشغلنا احنا في التصميم الصناعي. كانت محور الابحاث في الالفيه الثانيه زي ما قلت، وصلوا لاخر حاجه وصلوا لها اللي هي السمارت برودكت. محور الابحاث هو حوالين المنتج، البرودكت سنتر ديزاين. كل الابحاث وكل الدراسات وكل العلوم كانت بتدور في مجال التصميم الصناعي حوالين المنتج، زي وظيفه المنتج، مش عارف، نظريات المنتج، تكلفه المنتج، قيمه المنتج، جماليات المنتج، اقتصاد المنتج، اشكال المنتج. فكل ده كان كل نظريات في التصميم الصناعي في خلال الالفيه الثانيه بتدور. حتى احنا كاكاديميين في سواء الاندر جراديوت او البوست جراديوت كنا بندرس حوالين هذا الموضوع وما زادش عن كده. طيب في نقطه ثانيه في العلم وصلوا لها في الالفيه الثانيه اللي هي الاستنساخ. وطبعا الحقيقه انا في وجهه نظري ان الاستنساخ ده كان نوع من التحدي او من الغرور للخالق يعني، ولكن الاستنساخ ده الحقيقه بالفشل. واشهر حاجه كانت في نهايه الالفيه الثانيه، يمكن ناس كتير قوي كنا نسمع عنها او سمعوا عنها يعني الناس الكبار، هي النعجه دولي. هي اشهر نعجه في التاريخ اللي تم استنساخها. وتصور العلماء انهم هيعملوا انتاج كامل من البشر وجيوش البشريه. في الواقع السينما قدمت أعداد كبيرة جدا من الأفلام بتتناول هذا الموضوع اللي هو موضوع الاستنساخ. ويمكن في من ضمن الأفلام كان في فيلم خدوا نقطة دم من الديناصور وعملوا منها استنساخ لمجموعة من الديناصورات. لكن في نهاية الفيلم أو في نهاية التوقع اللي كان المفروض يحصل إن التكنولوجيا أو العلم طغى على الإنسان. يعني الإنسان وصل لمرحلة إن هو عمل مخلوقات تهاجمه، ما قدرش يسيطر على العلم هو اللي قدر، هو اللي فعلا سيطر عليه. طيب العنصر الثالث اللي هو التكنولوجي. في الألفية الثانية التكنولوجيا الحقيقة ظهرت أو تركزت في نهاية الألفية الثانية، بداية من المانيوال تكنولوجي، وبعدين الستيم تكنولوجي، وبعدين الإلكتريك تكنولوجي، وبعدين نيكولور تكنولوجي، وبعدين الكوميونيكيشن تكنولوجي، البايو تكنولوجي، لغايه ما وصلنا للهاي تكنولوجي اللي هي وصلنا فيها لتصنيع الروبوت. واصبح كل شيء في هاي تكنولوجي بالذات في مجال التصنيع. بقى الهاي تكنولوجي من الحاجات اللي بنعتمد عليها بشكل كبير جدا في المصانع. ده في نهايه الالفيه الثانيه اللي هي تعتبر برضو بدايه الالفيه الثالثه، او اللي طلع منها او انبثق منها فلسفه الالفيه الثالثه او التغير اللي حصل في الألفية الثالثة. طيب بالنسبة للفلسفة في الألفية الثالثة، طبعا زي ما احنا كنا بنقول إن الفلسفة هي عبارة عن فيزيكس وميتافيزيكس. الفلسفة في الألفية الثالثة اتركزت على الانتليجنت ديزاين. طبعا الانتليجنت ديزاين ده مش المقصود به المنتجات اللي احنا بنتعامل معاها أو بنعرفها. لا، الانتليجنت ديزاين ده المقصود بيه هو هدم نظريه الوجوديه والماديه الحقيقه. لان مقصود ان الكون باكمله لا يمكن ان يكون مخلوق او نتيجه الصدفه، وكل المخلوقات دي مستحيل تكون جايه نتيجه الصدفه او التطور. طبعا التطور اللي هدمته الاكتشافات الجي ان اي والار ان اي، وخاصة طبعا بعد سقوط النظريات دي ابتدى الفكر يختلف خالص. فالانتليجنت ديزاين ده المقصود به ان الكون ومكونات الكون من الخلق والتنوع والابداع والطلاقة ده لازم يكون وراه عقل مدبر او سيطرة او مصمم تصميم ذكي. يعني الكون ده كله معمول بتصميم ذكي اللي هو المقصود به الانتليجنت ديزاين. هو اللي وجد النظام والتنوع والدقة والترتيب والجمال والأصالة والطلاقة في الخلق طبعا، وإن يكون اكيد ان ورا الكون ده او ورا التصميم اللي احنا بنعيشه ده او الحاجات العظيمه دي هي محرك لهذا النظام ومسيطر عليه، والصدفه لا يمكن ان تصنع هذا النظام وتسيطر عليه. واكيد ان النظام ده وجد وتم صنعه لمن يقدره. يعني عشان اعمل نظام لازم يبقى فيه خالق، لازم فيه اكزيستنس، وجود، لازم يكون فيه حد يقدر الجمال ده او يقدر العظمه والطلاقه والابداع وكل التنوع الموجود في الكون ده. فطبعا مين اللي هيقدر كل ده غير الانسان؟ يعني هو اللي بيبقى الكون ده كله اتخلق عشان الانسان. طبعا يعني ده حتى على المستوى الشخصي بتاعنا، احنا لما حد يعمل لوحه يعمل حاجه ومفيش تقدير او مفيش حد بيقدر، ما بيحسش انه عمل او انجز اي حاجه. فالكون ده كله، الفلسفه قايمه على ان الكون ده كله اتعمل في خالق، في كون. لازم العنصر الثالث ده الهيومن برنسبلز هو ده اللي بيقدر، العنصر البشري اللي بيقدر الجمال ده كله. رجعت منظومة الالتفاف الفلسفة كلها حوالين الإنسان وحوالين أهمية الإنسان في الكون. يعني الإنسان مش مجرد تطور لحاجة اتطور من قرد الإنسان، لا، ده الإنسان مخلوق مستقل واتعمل له كل النظام ده. جت من هنا نظرية في الفلسفة اسمها الكيوس. الكيوس دي طبعا يمكن احنا الكيوس دي ترجمتها الفوضى، لكن هي طبعا مش معناها الفوضى أبدا. الكيوس دي في الفلسفة الإغريقية القديمة هي نظرية عن الخلق، الكون كله كان في ظلام. دي طبعا الفلسفة الإغريقية القديمة اللي بتقول كده، إن الكون كله كان في ظلام ولم يكن فيه أي شيء واضح، وكان يسوده التشوش، والتشوش ده هو اللي سموه الكيوس، وهو اللي خلق كل نظام وسيطر عليه. طبعا يمكن طبعا دي نظرية فلسفية، لكن طغت على العالم. لا، يبقى في تاني، رجعوا تاني ان لازم يبقى في تفكير منطقي وتفكير ان في حد مسيطر على الكيان ده كله. جت من الكيوس طلعت نظرية الفراكتال جيومتري اللي هي الهندسة التكسيرية. طبعا احنا بندرس الكلام ده عندنا في كلياتنا في التصميم الصناعي، وطبعا عشان نتكلم عليها طبعا عايزة لها يعني وقت كبير. الكيوس دي معناها الفوضى، يعني هي مش معناها الفوضى، هي معناها ان الشيء يبدو فوضوي، اصلها كده يعني مشوش، يبدو فوضوي. هو خاضع لهندسة وترتيب معين. زي مثلا على سبيل المثال ان الشجرة احنا بنشوفها كلها بنحس ان هي كده شكلها ممكن يكون الورق طالع من هنا او من هنا، يعني منظرها كده يسود الفوضى. لكن لو بصيت انا من الجذر والجذع والفروع والاوراق، هي كل الشجرة اساسها جين واساسها نظام ونظام هندسي، بس اللي انا بشوفها بشكل عام ان هي بيسودها الفوضى. الحقيقه ان طبعا يعني الشجره مثلا كمثال، انا لو انا خدت شجره برتقال مهما تطور الزمن او اختلف عمرها ما هتبقى مثلا شجره تفاح او تتغير، لا، هي كائن مستقل. فجت من هنا طبعا نظريه الكيوس هي اللي سيطرت على الفلسفه في الألفية الثالثه، وقلنا نجي منها الهندسه التكسيريه او الفراكتيكال جيومتري. طيب هنروح للتكنولوجيا في الألفية الثالثة. تحولت التكنولوجيا إلى الانفورميشن تكنولوجي. طبعا الانفورميشن تكنولوجي غيرت وسهلت كل شيء بشكل قوي وفعال وسهل الحياة. فإحنا وإحنا قاعدين في مكاننا نقدر نطلع على العالم كله ونشوف شتى جوانب المعرفة فيه دون أي عناء ودون أي تكلفة. وساعد على تكنولوجيا المعلومات الحقيقة العولمة، لأن العالم كله أصبح مفتوح وأصبحت المعلومات متاحة بنفس القدرة وبالكيفية، وأصبح العالم شيء واحد، وما زالت كل الأمور متاحة وكل العقبات اختفت. فطبعا فيمكن وانا قاعده في السعوديه بصمم وبعمل افكار انفذها في ارخص مكان في العالم، او اشتري بارخص الاسعار الماتيريال اللي هشتغل بيها، او احصل على افضل العماله، وكل ده متاح وانا جالس على الجوال بتاعي بستعرض واتواصل، وممكن ادفع ممكن ابيع كمان. مفيش اي جهد عليا، وهو الامر اللي اختصر الوقت والمجهود وخلق نوع من السرعه والتنوع، اثر بشكل قوي جدا على الاسواق العالميه. هبص للعلم اللي هو المحور الثالث في الألفية الثالثة. العلم أو علم التصميم بشكل خاص اتجه حوالين اليوزر سنتر ديزاين، إن كل العلوم التفت حوالين اليوزر المستخدم. العلوم الخاصة بالتصميم اهتمت بشكل فعال بالمستخدم. أصبح المتلقي لأي عمل هو محور التصميم ومحور الأبحاث والدراسات، وأصبح العلم يسعى بشكل دائم لتحقيق تكنولوجيا اللي هو التكنولوجي هايمونايزنج، اللي هي أنسنة التكنولوجيا عشان يذللها زي ربنا سبحانه وتعالى ما ذلل الدواب والكون والأرض للإنسان، فبيحاول العلم تذليل التكنولوجيا والسيطرة عليها بشكل كامل. وده كله كان ليه بالغ الأثر طبعا حوالين التحويل وتوجهات الإنسان وطرح مواضيع جديدة في الألفية الثانية، من الألفية الثانية للألفية الثالثة، وكانت نقلة قوية جدا. طيب أما نشوف بعض المواضيع اللي اختلفت أو تقريبا اتطورت ما بين الألفية الثانية والألفية الثالثة. طيب بص أشوف العلم بعد ما كان تحول الاهتمام بالعلم من في الألفية الثانية طبعا كان الاهتمام بالعلم من الدرجة الأولى، أصبح الاهتمام بالفلسفة في الألفية الثالثة أكتر من الاهتمام بالعلم، لأن حيز التفكير والتأمل والتدبر بشكل أكبر أصبح أهم من إن أنا أعتمد على نظريات علمية ثابتة. وأصبحنا نشوف المجتمعات كلها عاملة رؤية مستقبلية زي رؤية مثلا 2030، هي دي كلها فلسفة. فأنا أصبح كل مجتمع بيحط رؤية بيحط استراتيجية، فاختلف دلوقتي ما بقتش قواعد ثابتة. القواعد العلمية قواعد ثابتة ماشي عليها بدون تفكير وبدون تأمل. طيب في حاجة تانية اتغيرت طبعا، أنا جايبة يمكن عدد قليل عشان الوقت من الحاجات اللي اختلفت أو كان لها أثر جذري من الألفية الثانية للألفية الثالثة. التأكد وعدم التأكد. في الألفية الثانية كان لابد من الاختبارات المعملية والتأكد من النتائج في أكتر الأشياء طبعا بنسبة 100%. في الألفية الثالثة أصبح الإنسان بيملك القدرة على المخاطرة والطموح والتطلع، اللي أدى إلى أنه ممكن يجازف ويطرح أي موضوع عمله بدون التأكد منه، بيتأكد منه على الواقع الفعلي. الحاجات ال 3D اتحولت ال 3D إلى ال 4D طبعا، لأن الأشياء الثابتة اختلف الزمن. فال 4D طبعا دي جت من الكيوس، لأن الكيوس بيحدث في زمن. الحاجات المتفاعلة الخاصة بالحركة بالخاصة إنها في كل وقت بتغير شكلها، دي طبعا أصبحت أكثر جاذبية. وده على فكرة بنلاحظه كلنا في الإعلانات. الإعلانات الثابتة كلها اتحولت لإعلانات متحركة. التخصص الحقيقة ما بقاش التخصص. أنا مثلا في التصميم الصناعي يعتمد عليا 100%، بعتمد على الاندستريال ديزاينر 100%. لا، أصبح العمل الواحد ممكن يعتمد على مجموعة من التخصصات. فمثلا زي ما هروح أشرب قهوة، وأنا داخلة أشرب قهوة هلاقي إن التصميم الخدمة اللي تقدم لي وأنا بشرب القهوة اشترك فيه المصمم الصناعي والفنان ومصمم الجرافيك والمعماري والمهندس ومهندس الكهرباء. فهلاقي إن في مجموعة من التخصصات اشتركت في خدمة. وده على فكرة يمكن احنا بندرس برضو اللي هو تصميم الخدمة بشكل فعال يمكن في كلياتنا في التصميم الصناعي، لأن هي قايمة على التيم وورك من جميع التخصصات. البلاستيك آرت اللي هو الفن التشكيلي. الفن التشكيلي اتحول لفن أدائي، يعني ايه؟ يعني في عنصر حركة، في موسيقى، في نحت، في مجموعة من الفنون الميديا، فطبعا اداله عنصر جذب اكتر. البرودكت بدأ الاهتمام في مجال التكنولوجيا المساعدة، ان انا بهتم قوي ان انا اعلم او ادرس حاجة اسمها تكنولوجيا مساعدة. فالمنتجات اعتمدت بشكل قوي في الألفية الثانية على الماس برودكت، إنتاج كمي. ولكن في الألفية الثالثة أصبح إن أنا ممكن قوي أعمل أجزاء أو منتجات مساعدة، زي مثلا ذوي الهمم. أنا عايزة أعمل لهم أدوات أو حاجات تخدمهم كتولز. طبعا مش هنتج منها إنتاج كمي، أنا بعمل منها مجموعة 5 6، يعني بعمل عدد قليل. طبيب مثلا محتاج ان هو بيعمل جراحه او وعنده مشكله في استخدام الادوات او غيره، فانا ممكن اساعده ان انا انتج له قطع محدده. يعني اللي ساعد على طبعا الموضوع ده ظهور ماكينات CNC طبعا، والطباعه ثلاثيه الابعاد. طبعا سهلت الكلام ده ان انا ما بقدرش اعمل خط انتاج كامل ولا بعمل موديلنج. في كمان الاوبجكت اللي هو الموضوع اتحول لحدث. يعني لو انا في مؤتمر ولا حاجه او بعمل لقاء فاتحول لحدث، وده طبعا احنا كلنا بنشوفه على الساحه. يعني في الفانكشن، الوظيفه اتحولت الى المتعه. يعني المصمم دايما بيبحث على تحقيق المتعه في البرودكت بتاعه. التعامل وانا بشتغل لازم اكون مبسوطه، نفسيتي كويسه. يمكن ده ان المحاضره اللي قبل كده كانت بتتكلم على علم النفس الخاص بالتصميم، ففعلا كل ده لازم المصمم يراعيه. ويمكن ده من مستجدات الألفية الثالثه، ان انا لازم احقق المتعه. وجه من هنا التصميم اللي هو الايموشن ديزاين، اللي هو التصميم للعاطفة، وزي الديزاينر ممكن يتحكم في مشاعر المستخدم. الهاي تكنولوجي اللي هي وصلت نهايتها في الألفية الثانية اللي هي خاصة بالروبوت اتحولت للانفورميشن تكنولوجي طبعا، وهي اللي فتحت مجالات كتير قوي. فهي طبعا الانفورميشن تكنولوجي دي اللي هي الزرار السحري اللي انا ادوس على الداونلود واقدر احمل اسرار العالم كله، واسرار وثقافه وعلم ومعرفه من خلال الانفورميشن تكنولوجي. كنا في الألفية الثانية بنعتمد على الفص الشمال في المخ، بالذات في التعليم على فكرة. لكن في الألفية الثالثة تحول كل التعليم إلى الاعتماد على الفص اليمين اللي هو خاص بالإبداع والتأمل والابتكار أكتر كثير من الفص الشمال اللي كان خاص بالحفظ. وده يمكن احنا كنا لاحظناه في التعليم، كان اللي بيخش يحفظ الكتب، وحتى يمكن إلى الآن سايبه أثر لغاية دلوقتي في الطالبات يقول لك علمي لي أو خططي لي. كان اللي بيحفظ هو ده اللي يقدر يجتاز بمهارة. لا، الألفية الثالثة مش كده خالص. الحقيقة الألفية الثالثة ركزت على الإبداع، وإن الطالب لازم يفهم ويتأمل ويبدع في كل شيء. المخ والتفكير الثابت المبني على التقاليد والتكرار المكتسب من العادات والسلوك أصبح لا يتماشى مع طبيعة الألفية الثالثة، وأصبح العقل والتأمل والخيال والجديد هو سمة العصر، والتفكير خارج الصندوق. وعلى فكرة يمكن احنا بنشوف كتير دورات يقولك العلم التأمل والطاقة، فده طبعا كله خارج ان انا بنمي عملية المديتيشن. دي طبعا من الحاجات المهمة قوي اللي بانت في الألفية، نقلة من الألفية الثانية للألفية الثالثة اللي هي الرياليتي للفيرجوال رياليتي، الواقع الافتراضي. طبعا كلنا ما بنروح مكان ممكن قوي نروح محل ونقيس ونجرب ونلبس ملابس ونختار الوان ونختار الموديلات واحنا واقفين قدام المرايه. لا بنخش نبدل ملابسنا ولا اي شيء. ممكن نزور متحف، ممكن نخوض فعاليه معينه ونعيش معاها ونتفاعل معاها واحنا جالسين في مكاننا. طبعا ده يعني عمل طفره كبيره جدا. الاقتصاد القائم على الإنتاج أصبح اقتصاد قائم على المعرفة. كان المكان والعمالة ورأس المال هي العوامل الثلاثة الأساسية في عملية الإنتاج اللي هو الاقتصاد التقليدي، ولكن تغير هذا المفهوم فأصبح اقتصاد في الثالثة يعتمد على المعرفة الفنية والتعليم والإبداع، وصار الذكاء الاصطناعي وبرامج الكمبيوتر وتكنولوجيا المعلومات عبر نطاق واسع جدا في المنتجات، وصار له أهمية تفوق رأس المال والخامات والعمالة في اقتصاد المعرفة. الحقيقة اقتصاد المعرفة أصبحت المعرفة هي المحرك الرئيسي لنمو الاقتصاد، وده يمكن احنا شايفينه دلوقتي لما بستحدث أقسام جديدة أو بستحدث حاجات خاصة على التفكير وبرامج أكاديمية خاصة بالإبداع. أنا بغير كل المنظومة الفكرية الثابتة، بغير التلقين، بغير كل ده وببتدي أحط أو هيئ جيل يقوم على التأمل والتفكير والإبداع. ده طبعا يعني يمكن نقلة حضارية في كل المجتمعات، ودي تمت تقريبا في 20 سنة. طبعا يعني في النهاية أرجو أن أكون وفقني الله لتقديم تعريف شامل وموجز عن أهم التطورات اللي حدثت وأثرت في العالم والتصميم خلال الألفية الثانية والثالثة. وشكرا، والله يعطيكم ألف عافية.
شكرا دكتورة، يعطيك ألف عافية. شكرا. طيب حنبدأ الآن الفقرة الثالثة اللي هي جلسة النقاش. ديزاينر آية and Mr. Miguel. Yes, Mr. Miguel and Aya.
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hello.
Hi, hello.
So everyone now on board. Unfortunately, Mr. Adita couldn't be present today with us. He had an emergency and he won't be with us in the discussions. So it will eventually be you and Aya. And I'm with you in the questions. We have few questions to discuss here, and I will start with Aya. Aya, how does design trigger and or even social change?
I think design is very important in the social context of society. Design is always, I believe, is time and place. It's very important to design things that are relative to a current situation, a current time, and a current perhaps social issue that is happening to target things like this. If it's an environmental issue, if it's a social issue, maybe even a political, economical one. And the idea is to create something that can trigger this social change without having kind of, because usually these social issues they trigger kind of a rebellious acts, or they trigger something that allows the society to react in a way that doesn't give them any results. So I think design is really important when it is done well, to be able to trigger these social change, allow for conversation, allow for dialogue, allow for people to experience things differently in order for them to tackle a certain issue in a much more directional manner.
Okay, Miguel, you say
Yes.
that the client, you say that the client is a key factor for the design. By your point of view, which are the main factors to deliver a good design matching with the client needs?
Yeah. Some designs are outstanding, but never comes to reality. Some others are not really good by our point of view, like designers, but those are matching exactly with the client expectation. What I mean with this? More than now than ever, with the pandemic time, we are forced to work remotely sometimes without a direct contact with the clients. This could be a lack of information sometimes when you are defining the briefing. And you know, because we are just connecting through a computer or tablet or whatever. But to deliver a good design, of course, we must to fulfill the client needs. And we have to take into account, by my point of view, 4 main factors. Every product must have, you know. This is, I'm going to show you some pictures and ask some questions, okay? I would like all of you think about the answers. No need to write or say something, just think and check if we will arrive up to the same point. Let me share my screen. That's right. Okay. The first question is, which is the best bicycle to use every day? Maybe you choose number 2. This is one of the main pillars. This is the utility function. This is about how well the product does. Is it comfortable? Is it durable? How will we use it? The second question should be, which word match better with each bicycle? Which one is aggressive? Which one is polyvalent? And which one is about competition? Maybe something like this. This is how we experience the emotional attitude of the product. This is the second pillar. The third question should be something like, imagine the person that would own this bicycle. Let me help you a little bit. I choose these 3 guys. Maybe this is not the right order. Maybe it's something like this. This is how we experience the emotional attitude of the product. You know, this is the previous one. Now, this is the third dimension of the product. It's the cultural style of the product, the style we identify with. When the design matches these 3 levels, then we feel a connection with the product. But at the point of the product don't have a meaningful or purpose, we have a lack of something that this connection make us buy something. There are a 4th dimension of product experience. This is the beliefs. Let me come back to the pictures. And then, which is the best sentence fits best with which bicycle? Life is about training to win. Life is about transportation without carbon impact. Or life is about freedom and self-expression. Could be something like this. This is how we see the world, the purpose of our actions. If we would like to become an industrial designer to create fabulous products, we have to do and learn a lot of things to arrive up to this point. This is our purpose. Then we have to imagine the people who design those products thinking like a part of the tribe who will be riding those bicycles. Because if we are thinking about life is about training to win, the designer should be thinking something like making this bicycle helps athletes to improve their marks. If it's something like life is about transportation without carbon impact, we must think making this bicycle helps people to commute by themselves. Or if life is about freedom and self-expression, we must think making this bicycle makes people ride in his own way. I said the client is always the key factor because it's of budget, deadlines, or any other input coming into our projects. But we need to target the final user brain too. What's the utility or function of those products? Which experience the client will be feeling, their cultural style, the purpose of this product for a niche of potential clients. Where are we arriving to? From the point of view of buyers, their brains will choose for them before they know, in base of their belief system. The purpose of your products will be the mind connection point with the final clients. If you have these 4 pillars, you create this mind connection. This is the foundation of neuromarketing applied to design. And this is, by my point of view, the 4 pillars for design products.
Okay. So back to Aya, the second question was, what is the first aspect of design you consider is the highest priority actually?
Is the highest, sorry?
Priority?
Priority.
Yeah.
Sorry, I will ask you to ask the question one more time. The part of the process?
The first aspect of design that you consider, yeah.
Definitely, actually, just as Miguel was speaking, definitely the first aspect of design is understanding who your client is, who the end user is, and what their needs are, because at the end of the day, you're designing for others and not yourself. So defining that is definitely the priority before you start any sort of design process. Each design process has its own sort of priority, so to speak. They're all very important, and it's very critical to take into consideration and give each phase its time, only because each phase will really take the product either to the end or it can stop. So definitely understanding the client and then going through the whole process, from the actual design process to the end, to the user experience and the testing and the prototyping, before the product is actually on the market.
Okay, Miguel, we have the second part of the question, which is how industrial design impact into the interior design trends.
Yeah, everything was designed by someone. You know, whatever you see, every single object, furniture, lamps, appliances, everything, before arrive to the market, it must be designed by the industrial design. The industrial designer have a deep impact into the people's life. From the point of view of an interior designer like me, we are choosing from the market maybe 80–90% of the furniture, lamps, bathtubs, wallpapers, whatever you are looking for to make a good design, or any hotel, any house, whatever you are looking FF&E products for your project, you have to go to the market, except, you know, some small percentage that you make some custom-made items for, you know, any special function or some special measure that you need. But this is just a small percentage. In fact,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, we can see in these pictures, let me show you.
Yeah. During that, didn't you think that makes the interior designer more into set design instead of designing interiors?
Sorry, can you repeat? I don't understand.
Don't you think that because the amount of products that we purchase for interior design, or specify for interior design, whether wallpaper, lighting, furniture, etc., floor treatment, window treatment, doesn't make the interior designer more into set of design?
Yes, you know, because sometimes we are collectors, you know, for industrial designers. This is what I would like to explain, you know, how is the impact of, because of course, from some years before up to now, the interior design going up in trends, you know, before it was only architecture, and then architect make interior and the main architecture. But the last years, the interior design is growing up and make like their own place in the market, you know, because it's huge, the amount of materials, the amount of things that you have to take into account to make to deliver a good interior design, you know. But now I think the industrial design is something really important to take care, you know, because is the fountain where we are going to take something, you know. It's our hands, because we cannot design every single thing in a house, or every single thing in a hospitality or whatever project, or corporate projects, you know. Let me show you.
I also think, just on that note, I also feel and have realized that people nowadays, more than ever, actually, people are looking for that emotional connection with
Absolutely.
the products that they are using on a daily basis. The furniture in people's houses or in their offices, they don't want just furniture anymore. They want things that mean things to them, or function properly, or are making something easier in their everyday life, is solving a problem, provoking a thought. So there is that need. And so as an industrial, you know, designer or product designer, it's crucial to apply that, so that you know, this office doesn't fit for anyone else but this client, because it has X, Y, and Z that is very relative to the person. And so I think that's also something that I've realized recently, actually, through working with many clients.
Yep. Let me show you these.
Yeah, sure.
These pictures. Those pictures shows how the industrial designer are the first step creating trends into the interior design. You know, it's reflecting the everyday routines at home, at work, and in almost all aspects of the life. Here we can see how it looks like, you know, a kitchen in the 60s, how the colors was, the shape of the appliances, the tiles, the finishes, everything. And even the old technology with this radio, this yellow radio at the end of the background. Then we can see the evolution up to the 80s, and then the absolutely different color palette, different shapes, different texture. Then at the end of 90s or first of 2000, we have the minimalist style. It's just simple, straight lines, and that's all. And this is how we can see it right now, you know, in a luxury hotel or high-end restaurant. This is what we was talking about, you know, is every single thing that you see here, maybe not the chandelier because it's custom made, but it's custom made the shape or the measure, but not the technology to create this lamp, you know, because this is created by a factory, and this factory have designers that create these things. This is,
so
yeah.
Let's count a few things here, because what we see in the picture, if you see the chairs, the tables, the lighting, even the fashion, even the carpet and the ceiling, these are amount of products that we can consider how important the industrial design to understand the need of the interior design, where their products that they are designing will be used. In the end, if you are not designing proper industrial design products, it will end up that the interior designer will not select these products in their, let's say, especially the FF&E packages that we are discussing for hotels and hospitality business, because the hospitality business now is booming in Saudi Arabia with tourism and all the coming projects in Red Sea and Neom, Giddiya, other projects. And the amount of products in the FF&E packages, which is actually most of it as actually appliances and electronics and equipments. And these are designed by industrial designers, not interior designers, and ending up that interior designer is selecting from these specified suppliers or manufacturers who are designing and designing these, like this chandelier, for example, or the chair, or etc.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. This is something like, you know, it's like Aya said before. This is it's not just a chair. It's a chair designing for a purpose. It's for designing for a meaning. It's designing for a restaurant. It is not the same scale or the same size that you need for you know, an outdoor patio or whatever. You know, this is the important things that I would like to, you know, to highlight in this conversation. Like my point of view, like a designer, Of course, I did some industrial designer too, but not my main core of my career. But like an interior designer, we need a lot of, like I said, 80-90% of what we put or what we define for something, it's by industrial designer made before.
It's also it's important because yes, I studied industrial design, and through my education, industrial design touched briefly upon many different aspects, from medical equipment to machinery, aircraft, vehicles, transportation, and so on. So there are many aspects of industrial design, and I took the focus in my career specifically in product and furniture. And furniture is very relative to interior and spaces, because at the end of the day, you're creating or designing furniture pieces and products that have to fit in a specific space. So they come hand in hand, because without the space, you can't have the product, and vice versa.
Yeah, furniture is indicating even the function of the space.
Definitely, so, and the layout and understanding, and then there's of course the aspect of the technical part in that. So designing a product is one thing, and then understanding how it's made is something else. And that's also very important in the industrial world, because if you know how it's made, you are able to design much better. So understanding the manufacturing process of a product will help you reach a quicker and more successful end result.
I can tell that some of a lot of furniture actually companies now, they have a certain chair that Mr. Miguel showed us, having different sizes even, and different finishes for outdoor or indoor, even in swimming pool or outdoor in some different areas, to enable the interior designer to utilize and change the configuration to use the same chair. So ending up that the product is being sold and selected by many designers. What is your advice for the industrial designers or the new designers who are studying this field to go and how to start their own business, and what is the main principles and aspects they need to consider?
By my point of view, I think they have to be passionate. This is by my point of view, any kind of designer in any land, architecture, interior, industrial, whatever. You have to be passionate, because if you don't put passion, whatever you are doing, you cannot, add part of you to the design. And to me, it's very important, not just this to meet the client needs, if not thinking further, like Apple was thinking when they create the tablet, they create a product to make something that sometimes the principle of design is you have to make easier something for the clients, but something that the clients are asking for. They change the principles. They create something that the clients want. After created, the clients start wanting it. It's something like you create something that in the future the people will like or will love. This is something that we have to think out of the box and think in a big picture, and thinking always in the future, not just meet the deadlines or the must have this size or other size. We have to think whatever we are doing, even a chair, even whatever. We have to think in the future, not just in what we are doing now. We can, actually we have to think in new technologies, new materials like bionic fabrics, nanotechnology, 3D printing that is starting, arriving really strong in our markets. There are, fashion designers who are designing in their computers some clothes, And after that, they print by themselves at home their own clothes in their 3D printer, and that's all. You no need to go to the shop and buy something, or even
Yes,
no
exactly.
need to buy through online or whatever. You know, just do it yourself. Do it whatever you want, at your size, at your style. That's all. This is something that is now. It's not future. It's now, and now is the time is changing, and it's changing really quickly. Now is, you know, a transformation moment you must take advantage of, and wherever you can deliver, you have to, you know, to think in the future, not just in those days.
Okay.
I have I think two things. I'm a strong believer in you have to know the rules in order for you to break them. So that's very important. I think it's an important piece of advice that I was once told, and I would always give it. And the second is to always look for an opportunity to design for a need, not to just design for the sake of designing, because I think as a world of consumers, there's so much of everything. But you know, for example, a door stopper. You know, there was a need for that. The door wasn't staying open. They decided to put a crate of vegetables in front of it, and a designer thought, or somebody thought, there's a design opportunity there. I need the door stopper. So to look for things, there are gaps, and to look for that in order for us to be able to problem solve something and be able to tackle it for a need. I think that's an important focus as any designer, even in fashion industry, in the fashion industry, industrial design, architecturally, looking for those elements are quite important in my opinion.
Okay. We reached the end of this discussion phase, and we ended up, now time is up. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Aya, for being with us tonight, and thank everyone being with us tonight. We taking more than etc. in 5 minutes. See you tomorrow, and this talk will be eventually uploaded on the YouTube of the Umbrella Society Industrial Design Division, and see you tomorrow, inshallah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.